Well, good morning and welcome to this morning's session from Awesome Tech Training. I'm just going to give this a few moments to allow all of our attendees to join from the waiting room because we do have quite a large group this morning. Just bear with us a second. I can see we've got people joining very quickly. That's great. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, that seems to be working fine. Right, let's make a start. So this morning, the webinar from Awesome Tech Training, we're talking about getting started with WordPress. So a few kind of housekeeping points before we get into the core of the presentation. You will notice as you join that your microphones are muted. So whilst you can hear us, we can't hear you. We are recording the session today, and that's so that once we're finished here, we can get an email out to you with a link so that you can watch that recording back, but there will also be an opportunity in that email to download the slides. So all of the materials that we're using today and any links and screenshots and things like that will all be available to you after the session is finished so that you can watch that back at your leisure, rewatch parts and pause and follow along if need be. If you have questions, obviously your microphones are muted, so you can't ask those verbally, but please use the Q&A function that's right at the bottom of your Zoom control panel. If you pop questions in there as they occur to you, we'll answer what we can in the background as we're going along, but we also put some time at the end so that I can ask those of our presenters, and if there's any discussion needed, then we can do that in the Q&A section at the end. So a few introductions. My name is Rachel. I'm Business Development Manager here at Awesome Tech Training. I'm mostly in the background fielding those questions, making sure people are logged in correctly, etc. I've got two colleagues on the line today. I've got Steve Hanlon, also mostly in the background today, fielding questions with me, and our main presenter, Lorna Walker, who's going to be driving the whole show today. So Lorna, you can take it from here.
Thank you very much. Hello, welcome everybody. Good to have you with us. I'll just kick things off by running through the agenda for today's session. So I'm going to start just by very briefly talking about us, Awesome Tech Training, and what we do. And then we'll crack on and go through the sort of meat of the presentation. So I'm going to start off just by talking briefly about what WordPress is and why we recommend using WordPress. And then we're going to go through the process of setting up a WordPress site from first principles. So I imagine some of you will already have WordPress sites, and so this first part will be less relevant to you. But anyone who's thinking about starting from scratch, it's useful just to see how straightforward it usually is to install WordPress. And then we'll have a little poke around in the back end of the WordPress interface and see how that works and how you toggle between the front and the back. So unlike other systems like, say, Squarespace and Wix and so on, sometimes WordPress takes a little bit more getting used to. The interface is a little bit more confusing, but it's also substantially richer than either of those. So we'll talk a bit more about this as we go through. But just talk as well about how WordPress actually organizes content, how it thinks about different kinds of content, and how that will influence you and your thinking about how you organize your site. And then we'll have a look at the process of adding some new pages to a site or editing pages that you already have, and the key ways that WordPress controls, firstly, how your site looks. So we'll talk about themes, what a WordPress theme is, how the theme manages the look and the feel of the site, how you might go about choosing new themes, etc. And then in terms of functionality, so the things that the site can actually do, we'll talk about the way that WordPress uses plugins and widgets, and I'll show you some examples and some recommendations and so on as we go through. There's a lot to talk about here. I mean, obviously, this is the sort of tip of the WordPress iceberg. And it might feel like we're sort of whizzing through a lot of stuff fairly quickly. As Rachel said, you'll get the slides afterwards. I'm going to be dipping in and out of the slide deck. So the slide deck, a lot of it is sort of screenshots of what I'm doing that I'll actually be demoing for live. So when you get the materials afterwards, you'll have the recording so you can follow what I'm doing on the screen. If you want to replicate it for yourself, you'll be able to. And you'll also have the slides, which have got a whole series of screenshots in. So I won't necessarily be showing every slide as we go through today, but they'll be useful to you when you get them afterwards. And then, as Rach said, at the end, we'll have time for questions, but ping over your questions as we go through, and Steve and Rach will do their best to answer them in the background. So a little bit about Awesome Tech Training. Our focus is purely really on helping small businesses to take control of their own digital marketing. So we're primarily a training business. We do a bit of doing, but we tend to prefer to train people to do for themselves. And we can help you with pretty much all aspects of your digital marketing and your web development, particularly if you're on WordPress. And that might be building a new website for your business. So we've a training course that I'll talk about more at the end, where you can kind of work with us to build a site for yourself, or for people who already have a WordPress site and are maybe struggling to get to grips with it, a site that somebody else built or that you have developers built for you that you aren't, you're not working with them anymore and you need help with that. So we can offer you digital marketing and WordPress advice and support, and you can book sessions with us by the hour, half day, day. It really just depends on what you'd find useful. So at the end of this, if you think there's anything that we might be able to help you with, we're happy to have a sort of free half-hour consultation with you to talk through what you're working on and how we might be able to help. We've also got a whole series of other webinars, so if you find this one useful, check out that list and see if there's anything on there that you might want to book onto. So let's crack on and talk about WordPress. So let's start by just talking about what WordPress actually is. WordPress is a content management system, and a content management system is just a way of enabling non-technical people to build websites. So enables you to build a website without having to learn how to code. Essentially, it generates the HTML, the code for you in the background. So one of the big benefits of WordPress, and one of the reasons why we like it so much, it's been around for a very long time. It's been around nearly 20 years now, and it's free and open source. So everything that I show you today, you'll be able to do with free resources. You don't pay for WordPress. You won't pay for the themes or the plugins that I'm going to use today. WordPress is, as I said, very widely used because it's so popular. That means that it's very widely supported. So if you want to build a site and be confident that you're going to be able to get the training that you need to be able to use it and find developers and so on, WordPress is a really good choice. You'll see when we go through the process of sort of starting from scratch, when you first install WordPress, it's very limited in terms of the functionality that it has, and that's on purpose. So as you know, I'm sure, when you're thinking about things like search engine optimization, it's really important that a site runs quickly. And so the WordPress code base is as stripped back as it can be. So we'll have a look at the default WordPress theme at the first part of today's sessions, and you'll see there's very little in it at all. And that's on purpose. You extend your WordPress installation to do the things that you want it to do using plugins. So there's no sort of default setting for running an e-commerce store, because why should someone that doesn't want to have an e-commerce store have all that code on the back end of the site? So everything that you want to do, you do by adding plugins to extend the functionality of WordPress. And because it's so widely used and widely supported, pretty much whatever you want to be able to do, there will be plugins, usually multiple plugins, that are available to do that for you. I'll recommend a few as we go through today, sort of good starting points, and like ping us over a question if you've got a specific thing that you're interested in, and we'll see what we can do. WordPress uses themes to determine the look of the site. So again, you don't have to be a designer. You can design a site yourself from scratch, but also you can use the theme to kind of control the design for you. And again, because it's so widely supported, there are thousands and thousands of themes available to choose from. We'll talk more later on about how to go about making that choice. So as I'm sure you're aware, there are plenty of other options for non-technical website builders. So we mentioned Squarespace, things like Wix, Weebly, and so on. The big benefit of WordPress is that it's free. Those other ones generally aren't. So you generally pay a subscription. WordPress is much more widely supported and has a much wider range of functionality. And I think for me, one of the most important things is WordPress is not a commercial organization. It's open source. You can easily move your site away from WordPress if you want to. You have complete control over it. These other options, Squarespace, Wix, etc., they're commercial organizations and they're controlled, closed environments. So it's a much riskier proposition to have a site with those. You'll be more limited in terms of what you can do with it. And if those organizations go out of business or change their terms and conditions or something like that happens, potentially you can lose access to your site, which obviously is bad. So as I said, I think it's fair to say probably that there's a bit of a steeper learning curve with WordPress than there is with some of these other ones, but it is really well worth it for the reasons that we've outlined here. And just to kind of reassure you that WordPress is used by some really big names. It's not just a sort of hobby website building system. It's a proper, well-supported and commercially acceptable way of building websites. So the things you need in order to get started. So you need to have a domain for your website. So for us, awesometechtraining.com, for you, whatever it might be. So you may have that already, or you might need to buy a domain, and you need hosting for your website. So WordPress doesn't cost anything, but hosting a website does cost something. So organizations like GoDaddy or 123reg can provide you with hosting for a small website, a couple of quid a month, maybe a $5 or something like that. So it's not a big expense. And then all the files that are associated with WordPress are installed on your hosting company's web server. Essentially, that's what you're paying them for. So nothing goes onto your own computer, and you don't need to pay anything to WordPress at any point. We have a couple of blog posts so if you are starting from scratch, there's a couple of blog posts that might be relevant to you. How much will it cost me to build a website? Basically runs through, where do you buy a domain from? How much should you pay? Where do you get hosting from? How much should you pay? If you wanted to develop a site for yourself, what would the costs be? If you wanted to pay someone else, what should the costs be? And then for those of you who already have a site, if you're taking over a WordPress site that somebody else built, or you're struggling with some aspect of it, we've got a blog post, checklist of considerations, if you're responsible for an existing site that you didn't build. So like a starting point to help you get to grips with how an unfamiliar site might work. So we'll talk about the process, or we'll run through the process of installing WordPress. So I will go over, as I said, I'm going to sort of flick backwards and forwards at this point. So this is the back end of my hosting. So I've got a hosting account here, and I've got a domain that I've purchased, which is this att-installed.tk. So if you bought a domain and you logged into your hosting account associated with that domain, you would see something fairly similar to this. It probably wouldn't be identical, but it would be fairly similar. And pretty much all hosting companies now offer one-click install for WordPress. If you were using something like GoDaddy or 123reg, you wouldn't just see the WordPress logo, you'd see maybe 50 other logos of other content management systems. But for the environment that we're using here, we just have WordPress. So you scroll around until you see the WordPress logo, and then you just click install. And it's going to have a little bit of a think about it for a moment. And then it's just saying, where do you want it to be installed? So I'm not going to change the default that it offers. So it should install the files. As I said, the files are being installed on the server of the hosting company. So there's nothing being downloaded onto your machine at this point. And sometimes this just takes a few moments. So it's exciting to watch the ball turn. We'll give it a second or two. I've got a one already set up, one I made earlier. Oh, here we go. So it's installed successfully. So here's the domain, just going to click on that. And there's just a few kind of administrative questions that WordPress is going to ask at this point. So first of all, you can set the language to whatever language you like. So I'm going to set it to English UK, for obvious reasons. And then it's going to ask you, what do you want the name of the site to be? This is something that you can change later. I'm going to call this my practice site. You can call it whatever you like, and you can change it later in the settings. And then you need to set up a user. So these are the details that you're going to use to log into the site in future. So you could use your name, or you could, as I've done here, just admin, any system that you like. And then WordPress will suggest a password for you. I'm going to make a note of that. And it's going to suggest something like this, something really crazy that it's impossible to remember. It's a really good idea to keep a strong password. So one of the sort of disadvantages of WordPress being so popular is that there's a lot of effort goes into trying to hack into WordPress sites, automated hacking through password guessing. So having a password that's very hard to guess is a good first line of security when you're setting up a WordPress site. It's going to ask for you to set up an email address, and then we are pretty much good to go. So we click install. And then basically this is done now. It says, thank you very much. Log in with the username that you've just created and the password that you've just set up. So drop my password in here. So in the future, once you've installed WordPress and you want to log in, you will always go via this WP-login up here at the top. So you never need to go back via your hosting company. And in I go. So this is what a blank, let me just get rid of that. This is what a sort of out of the box WordPress installation will look like. So if you are running a site you already have, you're probably going to see something quite a lot more complicated than this, because as I said, WordPress out of the box will come with the absolute minimum of functionality. So all this stuff down the left-hand side is really just the bare minimum that you need to get a simple site up and running. So if you're looking at your own website and thinking, blimey, ours looks crazy compared to this, that will be because you've got more functionality. So if I just quickly show you for the purposes of comparison, this is our website, the back end of our website. We've got loads more things down the left-hand side because we've got just more stuff going on. So as you build out the functionality of the site, more features will be added. When you're in the back end, you can toggle between the back end and the front end always just by clicking on the name of the site up in the top left-hand corner. So what I'm looking at now, you just click through a few times. This is the back end, click through, this is the front end. So this is a live site on the actual internet that anyone who's visiting it would see this. So this is the kind of most basic, out of the box, not very exciting at all, dummy website that WordPress kind of gives you to start working with. And you can always, like I'm doing here, just toggle backwards and forwards to see the back end and the front end. Down the left-hand side, so when you first install WordPress, it comes with a little bit in the way of dummy content to get you started. And WordPress makes a distinction between pages and posts. So I'm just going to quickly go back to the slides. So this is just running through, like I said, what we've gone through so far. Post v pages. So when WordPress was first set up, it was very much set up kind of as a blogging platform. And it's really only over time that it's developed into something more sophisticated and more suitable for building fully featured websites. But the fact that it started as a blogging platform is still kind of runs through the DNA of WordPress and is why it distinguishes between these two types of content. So posts and pages are the two main ways that you need to think about structuring your content in WordPress. So posts are for things like blog posts. So if you've got new content that you're adding fairly regularly, so you need to add blog posts and just kind of keep a list of new posts ticking over. Things like news articles, quite often people use posts for stuff like press releases and so on. So anything that has a sort of temporal element to it would go as posts. Anything else, more static content that doesn't often change. So things like your home page, your About Us page, a contact page, those are pages. You don't have to have any posts at all. You can just have a website built entirely of pages. That's fairly common. But if you're doing any blogging or anything like that, you would use posts, and then basically the rest of your site would be as pages. So if we go back to the WordPress install, you will see on the left-hand side, we've got this menu item pages and the second menu item posts. So if I have a quick look in pages, you will see that it's generated two sort of dummy pages to kick things off. Whenever you see any pages in this list, you can always just click on view to see how they look on the front end. So if we have a quick look at the sample page. So this is just basically so that we know how a page is going to look in this theme. Later on, we're going to change the theme. So what we end up with won't look like this, but this is how we're starting. it has also given us a privacy policy, which it's put as draft. So this is because of GDPR. It's a legal requirement now that you have a privacy policy on your website, and WordPress gives you a kind of dummy template. So again, if we can preview this because it's not live, it's got suggested text. So you can't just stick this live, but you can just run through it and change it to whatever's relevant to you. If we have a quick look at posts, again, you'll see we've got one dummy post in here at the moment. And we look at that. So posts are slightly different. You've got more information on posts. So for example, it will tell you when it was published, who it was written by. If you're categorizing your post by type, it'll show you what category it's in. And if you've got comments turned on, people can comment on your posts. So they have different functionality to pages. We go to the home page of this at the moment. By default, if you don't change it, your home page in WordPress is just going to be a chronological list of all your posts. So we've only got one post at the moment, but if we were to add more, we would see them sort of drop down on this page. Again, 9 times out of 10, you would probably want to change that, and we'll change that as part of what we go through today. The other area that might be useful to you is the media library. So the media library is where you will store things like videos and images, if you've got PDFs that you want people to be able to download, anything at all that you need to kind of deploy anywhere on your site. So we'll come back to that and add some things into there in a moment. If we go back to the front end of the site, you can see up here we've got this option, Customize. So any theme that you install, as I said, this is the default WordPress theme, but any other theme that you install, you'll always have this Customize option. If we are using this current dummy WordPress installation, we click on Customize. So you see it says, right, the active theme that we're working with now is this theme 2021. As I said, I'll talk a bit more about themes in a moment. And you can see that actually it's sort of just by clicking on Customize, it's changed what we were looking at. So it's changed, given us a new home page, which is not just a chronological list of blog posts, but actually has some kind of content on it. It's given us a menu up here that we didn't have before, and the site name has been tweaked and so on. Any theme that you have, as I said, you'll have this Customize menu. And when you go into Customize, you'll have options down the left-hand side. This dummy theme has very few options. So there's not a lot that you can do to change the look of this. There is a little bit. So if we just have a quick look at some of the options in here. So as I said before, if I wanted to, I'm going to change the name of the site. And you can see as I change it here in the settings, so it changes on the version of the site that I'm looking at. The change isn't pushed through to the front end that a visitor would see until I publish it. So at the moment, it's just me seeing that, okay, that's how it would look if I changed the name. I could load a logo up here if I wanted to. I'm not going to do that now, but if you had a logo, you could load one up. You can sort of play around a little bit with the background. So you can select a different color for the background if you want to. Again, not super exciting in terms of the options that are available in the background. You could change the background to be an image if you wanted to. So let's just quickly do that. So you can see I've gone into background image and it says select an image. My media library is empty at the moment. So this is a good opportunity to load up some content. So you can just pull images off your desktop, anything that you've got. So again, if I go to my desktop, I have got some images ready for this. And I've also got a video that I might use later. So it's just going to load those into the media library. And let's say while it's doing that, I want to use this image as my background. So that is a little bit on the nuts side, but if that's your jam, you can have a nice image as a background. I think probably not going to do that. Beyond that, there isn't very much that you can change in here. So in terms of styling, this theme is very limited. Let's publish it. So we'll keep those small changes. And let's just go back and see what it's done in the back end. you will see here, it's actually added some more pages for me. So essentially what it's given me now is the structure of a website. So that does give me everything I need to crack on. Obviously, I'm going to make some changes, but in principle, if you wanted just a really simple website, just to get something up and running as quickly as possible, this is fine. This does the job. So it's given me an about page. We didn't have this posts page before. So you can see now it's got this page, create your website with blocks. This is going to be our home page. This is the front page. And from now on, whenever we add new blog posts, they're actually going to be added to this blog post page. So again, if you look at this view, this is the front page of the site. So it's changed from what we were looking at before. It's no longer just the chronological list of blog posts. And so I'm going to make some changes to that page. So again, let's go back in here and edit. And we'll talk a little bit about how the page editing process works in WordPress now. So if you have an old WordPress installation, so if you're running an older version of WordPress, so probably if you're running a version of WordPress that's more than a couple of years old, you'll have a different way of editing your pages. So WordPress changed its editor, as I say, about 2 years ago. Previously, you kind of actually did need to know HTML a little bit to do things like columns and so on, but it built, changed its system to what it calls this block editor. And essentially now you build your pages. You can think of a page as just a series of blocks, and each block has a different kind of content in it. So if we just break down what we've got here, I just want to be able to see. So this is the title of the page at the top here. And then everything below this line is what's going to actually appear on the page. So if I click into this, you can see over on the right hand side here, we've got a block menu that controls the settings for this block, and it tells us this is a heading block. So it starts with a heading, and then if we scroll down, this is just a spacer block, so it adds some space into the page. Underneath that, we've got 2 columns side by side with images in them. So you can have blocks embedded into other blocks as you have here. So you've got a column block with 2 images side by side and another image underneath. And then what have we got? Oops. Down at the bottom here, we've got more space added in. And then this is another column block. Over here, you can see it's a column block with 3 columns in. And again, you can embed different things into blocks. So in this block, we've got a heading, H3, and a paragraph, and the same all the way along, a heading, a paragraph, a heading, a paragraph. And then another block at the bottom here, and then the rest is controlled by the footer and the header. So what I'm actually going to do is take all of this out. I'm just going to highlight it all and delete it. And we're going to build a little bit more from scratch, so you can see how you would add blocks and so on if you were doing this for yourself. So any page that you have, wherever you see this little plus sign, this enables you to add a block. So I'm going to start by adding an image at the top of my page, and it's going to ask me either I can upload a new one or I can take one out of my media library. So I'm going to choose this one. And then I've got various options here on the right hand side and here on the top of the block where I can make changes. So if we have a look at some of the options here, I would like this image to run the full width. So I'm going to make it a nice sort of header. So I'm going to say full width, please. And then I also have the option up here of adding text. So let's say welcome. Very hard to type while people are watching. Welcome to my website. This is a paragraph block at the moment, but I want to change it into a heading. And as you can see, I've got various options up here that I can play around with to tweak that. What else can I do? I can make this image full height if I want to, so a nice hero image when people arrive on the site. And then there are other options related to the block on the right hand side. So this is the kind of style of it. You've always got stuff in the block itself in this little menu at the top of the block. And then you've always got stuff on the right hand side as well. So I'm going to check this box for fixed background. So what that's going to do is make the picture stay still when I scroll, which is an effect that people quite like. So this is a page that already exists. So it's asking me to update it with the changes that I've made, which I will do. And then I'm just going to open it in a new tab. So you can see what we've done here. It starts to look a bit more exciting, like an actual website might look. And that's basically the process of building a page kind of runs like that. So wherever you see a little plus sign, you can add a block. You can either search for blocks, you can look through the list, you can browse the options. So for this, I want to add some space. I'm going to just stick a spacer in there. And then let's say I want a heading. And I just start typing. And again, you can play around a little bit with it. Let's say under that, maybe some columns. So here's a column block, some options. So there's not a lot of super exciting functionality in this basic install, but there are some things that you can do. So again, within my within my column, I can have headings. I can put a paragraph underneath that. Let me just copy and paste some lorem ipsum to go in there. Again, same here. Make that a bit smaller, stick a paragraph in. We can do something exciting with images. So we could put in a gallery of pictures. Choose from our media library and create a gallery. So it's formatting those automatically. So if I, let's say, took one out, it reformats them so they're always going to look nice. Let's put another spacer in. Other things you could do, let's say you wanted to embed a video, that's really straightforward. If your video is on YouTube. So here I've got just the URL of a video that I want to embed. And I click embed and there it is. So if I just update that and then we refresh it here, you will see how those changes look. So again, it's not the most exciting website in the world, but it is now something that is recognizably a website. As I say, 9 times out of 10, or probably 99 times out of 100, you wouldn't stick with this theme, you would change the theme. So if I just ping back to my slides, let's talk a little bit about themes. So this is just running through what I've already showed you. So themes are what controls the appearance of your site. So essentially a theme is a collection of page templates. So what do you want the home page to look like? What do you want a post to look like? A general page, what should they look like? And style sheets that define the appearance. So like how wide should the columns be? What colors should be used? All of that sort of stuff. WordPress keeps the design of the site, the look of it, separate from the content. And so what that means is you can change the way that your site looks without affecting the content. So I've got content now in my site. I'm going to install a new theme that's going to change how the site looks, but it's not going to mess up the content that I've already installed. So when you very first get WordPress out of the box, it will come pre-installed with its own theme, which is this 2021 theme that I've been using. And you could stick with that, but as I say, most of the time you're going to want to change that. Again, themes are, for the most part, free. There are many thousands of free themes that you can choose from. You can also buy themes from theme developers. You can have a developer build a theme specifically for you if you want to. And it's not unusual for themes to have a sort of freemium model where you can get a basic version for free, and then there might be some more exciting functionality that you have to pay to unlock. You can also get themes that are specific to particular kinds of sites. So if you're a yoga teacher or a personal trainer or a consultant, you can find themes that are very specifically come with a lot of styling particular to that business. Typically, I would say the more that the theme is kind of highly designed out of the box, the less flexibility you're going to have to be able to customize it. So typically, We tend to go for, like, I'll show you the theme I'm going to use now. It's quite a general theme, doesn't have a lot of exciting style out of the box, but it's highly customizable. And I prefer that. But, you know, again, it's horses for courses, really. You would check, for example, if you've got special functionality, like you want to run a store, for instance, make sure that your theme's compatible with that. We've got a blog post on this as free guide on our website, how to choose the best theme for your website, which kind of talks about some of these issues that I've discussed in a wee bit more detail. So if we go to the back end of our site here, everything to do with themes lives in this appearances menu here on the left hand side. So if you click on themes, as I said, you can see, okay, the theme that's currently active is this 2021 theme. And these others are the two previous WordPress defaults. So it tends to suggest a new theme once every year, a couple of years. And you can then add a new theme. So any theme that you can find in this WordPress theme library will be free to install. So you don't get in this listing if you're charging people for your theme. And as I said, you can search by the name of it, by what you're interested in. So if I was a personal trainer, you immediately start to see, okay, here are some themes that have obviously got a kind of personal training vibe. As I said, quite often with a very highly designed theme like this, you're going to be limited in terms of the customization options. If you ever see a theme that you like the look of and you want to understand a bit more about how it might look, you can always preview it. And so this is just going to show us, okay, broadly speaking, this is the style of that theme. If I like the look of that, I can click install. If I do not, I am going to install a theme called Astra. So this is the theme that we use on our own website, and quite often when we're building sites, we'll use this. And the reason we like it is because, again, it's very widely used, so it's highly supported. And also it's very, very customizable. It's very flexible. So you'll see when I install it, it's not going to look super spangly straight out of the box, but you can do a lot with it. So I know this is the one I want, so I'm just going to click install. And as I said, this isn't going to change the content that I've added. So it's not going to delete my text. It's not going to write over my images. It's just going to change the look and feel of my site. So once I've installed it, I need to activate it. And then you'll see once this is done, when we go back to the front end, that it will look quite a lot different to how it looked before. So if I go to the front end now, this again, not the most exciting website in the world, but it looks different to what we had before. And the key thing is, if you click on the customize now, you'll see that there are just many more options for this theme than there were previously. So when we looked at the 2021 theme, really all you could do was change the background color and change to an image if you wanted to. There wasn't really a lot else that you could do, but there's really quite a lot else that you can do in here. So whenever you're in this customization area, anything where you see one of these little blue pens is something that you can change. All the changes that I make in here will be just for me to see, as I said earlier, until I save them. So I'm just going to do a few things in here just to give you an idea of what sort of things are possible. So one of the things that I want to change at the moment, the site is in these containers. It's got this sort of boxed style, and what I would prefer is for it to be full width. And within that full width, I'm going to change the width of the actual content section to be a bit narrower. Other things that I might do here, I'm going to turn off the sidebar because I don't like having a sidebar on my home page. So that again is something that you couldn't control in the previous theme that you were using, but you can control here. So for pages, I'm going to say I don't want the sidebar. So again, now that we've turned off the sidebar, we can see the full width effect. So I'm going to publish those changes and just have a look and see how the page looks now. You've also got more customization options actually in the page now. And this, again, it'll be different for different themes. So if you have a look at that blog post, how to get to grips with a site that you didn't build, there's some advice in there for how to kind of start working out what your theme can do. One of the things that I want to do here is stop this title from appearing at the top of the page. You can see we didn't have any of these options before, but we do now. So we can disable the title and update. And again, if we have a look now at the page, it starts to look a bit more exciting. Other things that you could do if you wanted to, we can make that header transparent, so the image will go up underneath it. So if we have a look at the header builder, we didn't have anything like this in the basic theme, but now we've got a bit more control over what's in the header. So the header is this section at the top here. So at the moment, it's just got the site title and the menu in it. You can add a logo in here if you want to. So I'm not going to do that now, but if you have a logo, you can easily add one. I'm going to turn on transparency for the header. So you can see now the image goes underneath, and I'm going to need to change the colors of the text here so that we can still see them against the image. So for the title, we're going to change the color to white, and for the menu, we are going to change the color also to white. So again, quite often when you kind of get into grips with a site, you're going to need to spend a little bit of time sort of poking around in these options. We would generally recommend that you start by just sort of working your way through. So you can see now we're starting to get something that looks a lot more kind of website-y. And it's relatively straightforward to get to this point. So if I just go back to the themes. So we've talked about how you can change the appearance of the site. Let's talk about how you can change the functionality of the site. So as I said earlier, how WordPress works is really not by kind of burdening you with functions that you don't need. So it's up to you to decide what you want it to be able to do and to add that functionality as you go through. And the main ways that you do that are through what it calls plugins and widgets. So if we go back to the back end, I'm going to add a plugin here that will enable me to build a contact form. So you have a look here, you've got this plugins menu. If we click on installed plugins, there's nothing in there at the moment because we haven't installed any plugins. So I'm going to click add new. There are many, many different plugins that you could use for building contact forms, but I like this one, WP Forms, because it's quite highly featured, it's relatively intuitive to use, it integrates with things like MailChimp and so on, so you can have a form that pulls through contacts into your MailChimp account and so on and so forth. Whenever you're adding a new plugin, you might be knowing what it is that you're looking for, like I've done here. I've literally searched by name for this particular plugin, but you can also just search by what it is that you want to do. And you might be scrolling through this list thinking, which ones should I install? The things that you need to think about here are to make sure that it's reasonably well used. So WP Forms has got 10,000 5-star reviews and 4 million active installations. It was updated less than a month ago, and I know that it's compatible with this version of WordPress. So I'm on relatively safe ground installing this. If you scroll down a little bit further, something like this, for instance, which has got 1 5-star review, it's only got 5,000 active installations. It was last updated 5 months ago, and it's untested with this version of WordPress. That is asking for trouble. So a little bit of due diligence before you install plugins, but I know that this is the one I want. When you're installing plugins, quite often if you're developing a site, you'll install a load of different plugins. Oh, I want something to do this and something to do that. I try this form, I didn't like it, I've tried a different form. It's good practice just to tidy that stuff up as you go. So again, I need to click activate to make this live. So if you install a plugin, you decide that you're not going to use it, delete it again afterwards so that it's not cluttering up the back end. Sometimes when you install a plugin, nothing much will happen. Sometimes, as with this one, it will bring you into a sort of wizard to get you up and running. So this is, again, this is a good sign. It means the people who've built this plugin, given some thought to how to make it easy for people to use. You will see as well now, I've got a new item here on the left-hand side. So this is how your menu starts to sort of build out as you build the functionality of the site. So I'm going to click here to create my first form. And as I said, one of the reasons why I really like this particular form plugin is that it comes with a load of sort of dummy forms, defaults already set up. So I'm going to use this template, which is a simple contact form template. So here's my simple contact form, just name, email, message. That's all I want. I'm happy with that as it is. So I click save. And then I'm going to close out of this form editor and go back to my WordPress backend. And you can see now I've got this simple contact form that appears in the list of forms. And so you could have a contact form, you could have a newsletter sign up form, you could have a request a demo, you can make as many forms as you like, and you just deploy the forms on the different pages on your site. So if we go back to our list of pages, so I'm going to stick the form on the end of the contact page, of the home page rather. I click edit. So here's my list of blocks. It's worth saying, you can see for yourselves, obviously, WordPress is not a sort of what you see is what you get. There are other ways of building websites that are, as I said at the start, more intuitive. But for this, like what I'm looking at in the back end here, roughly approximates what I'm looking at the front end, but it's not an identical like for like. What you see is what you get. So I want to add a contact form down here at the bottom. So I click the little plus button. And if I search now for WP, you will see it's added. I didn't have this block before, so this was added when I installed the plugin. So it says, cool, what form do you want? I've only got one form, but if I'd created a load of others, I would be able to pick one from the list here. And it's just going to drop that form into my page. And if I click update, and we have a look at the page, we can see here's the form at the bottom. So again, you would probably want to do some spangling here. You might want to put a title on it. You might want to put a bit more space between the video and the form. You probably want some space at the bottom here. Perhaps you want to put a background on it. So there's always stuff that you can do, but you can see the kind of basic functionality is pretty straightforward. Other things that I can do in the back end, you can move stuff around. So if for some reason I wanted the heading underneath the copy, I could do. As I said before, if I remove one of these images, it will automatically reformat my gallery for me. What did I want to do? I wanted to add some spacing underneath here. So if you just have a quick look, if I click browse all here, so you can see the range of different options that are available. There's all kinds of things in here. So paragraphs, headings, you would use the most. And then this is all different ways of formatting text. So if you wanted to create lists or quotes and so on. And previously, as I say, you would have had to have known how to code to be able to say, this is a quote, this is a list. You can drop in a single image or galleries, audio files. If you've got something you want people to be able to download, you can just stick normal files in. You can stick a nice video in if you want to. I've embedded my video here via YouTube, but you can also have the video actually on the back end of the website. And there are all these various different things. So too many things for us to sort of work through now, but enough for you to get a feel. And I'm going to recommend a plugin for you in a moment that actually gives you a much more expanded list of possible plugins. There's one thing I've just remembered I wanted to show you, which is on the background here. So we've got this background currently as a static image, but there's no reason why you can't have this as a video if you want to. So if I wanted to change that and click replace, open up the media library, I am just going to load up the video that I have, this one here. So this video is actually going to be hosted on the web servers directly, whereas the YouTube video that I embedded lives at YouTube. So if that got deleted off YouTube, it wouldn't display on my website anymore. But this video that I'm loading up here lives on the website, so it's safe. So that's the one that I want. I click update, click through to view the page. So again, you can start to see how it's possible relatively quickly to build something that looks fairly professional and with exciting functionality. Exactly what you're going to be able to do really will depend on what theme you're running. And as I say, this theme Astra we highly recommend because it enables the sorts of things that we're looking at here. So let me just, oh yeah, so this is what I wanted to talk to you about, the recommended list of plugins. So here are some sort of starting points for you. So if you want more blocks to play with, this Ultimate Add-ons plugin is a good one. So this will come with a whole series of other blocks that do even more exciting things. So things like pre-formatted FAQ sections, more styling. So again, if you're not particularly design oriented yourself, this is a good plugin to give you some more options for styling pages. If you want to be able to add royalty-free images, this plugin Instant Images I really highly recommend. So when you're building out a website, if you don't have a lot of a budget for paying for images that are owned by other people, then royalty-free image sites, this is a site called Unsplash that has a plugin called Instant Images. Actually, let me just install that for you now so we can see how that works, because that is a good one. So if I go to my plugins list, installed plugins, you can see here's the forms one that we've just installed. Let's install Instant Images. I know what it's called. I'm searching for it directly. Here it is. It's been installed a load of times. It's relatively up to date. I'm happy that this is the one that I want. I'm activating it. And you'll see, right, it's added to the list. And over here now in my media menu, I've got this second option here, Instant Images. And this essentially just enables me to, this is like a window into this website, Unsplash. All the images that are here are free for you to use. You don't have to credit, you don't have to pay. You can search by whatever it is that you're interested in. And when you see images that you like the look of, you just click on them. It will automatically drop those into your media library. So these are the ones that I've just added here. So that I think is a really useful resource. We use that on a lot of sites. If you're interested in selling online, you want to set up an e-commerce store for WordPress, we would generally recommend WooCommerce. That's the most widely used and widely supported WordPress specific plugin for e-commerce. And it's a free plugin. There are aspects of it that you would pay for, but all the things that you need to set up a basic shop and get it running, looking professional, are within the free version. So it's relatively straightforward to configure, user-friendly, incredibly widely supported, and will automatically build all the sort of checkout funnel pages. Will integrate with your PayPal, with Stripe, whatever you want. So highly recommend that. These days, as I'm sure you know, you are by law supposed to have a cookie consent plugin running on your site, or cookie consent functionality on your site. And this is the plugin that we use, that we recommend for that. So it's very simple to set up. You basically install it and away it goes. If you're building a site and you want to have it kind of under wraps until you put it live, then it's useful to have a coming soon plugin or a holding page plugin. So again, this is the one that we recommend. It's called coming soon seed prod. And this, again, very straightforward. You install it, you say, yes, the site is live, or no, I'm under development still. And you as the admin will still be able to see the site, but behind anyone that's coming to the front end of it will see a holding page that you can customize. If you're running Google Analytics, which you definitely should be, there's a plugin that we recommend, which is this one, which is a really quick and easy way to install Google Analytics and get that code up and running on your site. And we've actually got a video guide to that I'm linking you to here, which shows you how that plugin works, how to install it, how to take your Google Analytics tracking code and insert it. People are obviously interested in search engine optimization. There's a huge amount of SEO built into WordPress these days. So stuff like optimizing the size of your images and generating site maps for Google to read and so on. All of that actually comes with the core WordPress install these days. As I said, it tries to keep the kind of code load as low as it can for speed purposes. So WordPress is a good option for SEO. But this plugin, Yoast, is the most widely used SEO plugin, and it enables you to things like edit your meta titles and your meta descriptions, easily integrate your site with Google Search Console, all kinds of stuff. We've got a video guide to this as well that you can take a look at if you want to know more about how it works. And then some other options just to consider for the sorts of things that people quite often ask us about. If you want to be able to take bookings and appointments, so let's say you're, running classes or taking meetings and people to be able to book them online. As is often the case, there are free versions and then there are options that you can pay for. And obviously, the more functionality you want, the more likely it is that you're going to have to pay. But here are some options that might work. For event bookings, actually, this is the plugin that we use to run the event bookings on our own website. The simple version of that is free, but you can also enhance it with some premium versions. When we talk about premium, we're generally talking about, $20, $30, maybe $50. We're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of pounds. So quite often plugins that you need are free, but if you do have to pay, you're almost certainly not going to have to pay very much. So that takes us through the kind of whistle-stop tour of the basics of WordPress. I just wanted to talk briefly about some next steps that might be of interest to you, and then we'll see what questions there might have been. So if you're interested in getting a site up and running quickly, we've got a free video, this build a one-page website in an hour, which uses the Astra theme, which is the one that I switched to today. And that's if you just want a kind of professional looking but simple one-page site that gives an overview of your business, enables people to get in touch. Have a look at that. We've got a whole series of free WordPress videos and resources and so on. I've pointed you at some of those as we've gone through where it's been relevant to what I've been talking about, but it's worth checking out the others as well. And then we offer training. Quite often what we do with people was one of two things. People who want to build a site, don't have a site and want to build one. We can sit down with you over the course of a day on Zoom and basically take you through the process of building a site to your specifications. So you're doing the building, so you're learning the WordPress as you go along. You're not just getting given something that somebody else has built. It's tailored to what you want, but you've got someone holding your hand to kind of take you through the process and make sure that it has the functionality that you want and so on. So that's something that, for a simple site, can easily do with you in a day. If you have an existing WordPress site, we quite often spend time with people basically going through their existing sites with them and helping them understand. It's not at all unusual to have a site that somebody else has built for you or developers who don't work for you anymore, and you need help just how do we add, what if we want to add more content? What if we want to do this? What if we want to do that? So again, sometimes people only need an hour for that, just to know how to do one specific thing. Sometimes they want to spend a day really digging deep. Whatever suits you, we can work with. Just get in touch with Rach, talk about what you want, and we can sort something out. And as I said at the start, we've got a whole series of other webinars. Some are WordPress specific, some are more general digital marketing webinars. So have a look at those and see if anything takes your fancy. So thank you very much for sticking with it. I hope that you found it useful. And I'll hand back to Rachel and Steve and see if there have been any questions as we've been
lots of questions. I think we've answered quite a lot in the background, but I do still have some. Don't worry. So there's a couple of these I think that are linked, but the general theme is I have an old WordPress editor on a site I inherited. Can you show us how and where to upgrade the WordPress version? And is there then a risk that the site using the old editor will have problems with the new editor?
Yes. This is something Steve might want to talk more about, but the answer to the second question is definitely yes. You're going to want to tread very carefully with that. Steve, do you want to talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. So, Rach, is this Joshua's question about the trying the different themes?
No, this is there's two. There's that one and there's this one. So an old WordPress editor. So if you upgrade the WordPress version, which you probably need to do, how does that old editor and the new editor, you know, is there a problem?
There are ways around it. So the way that it stores the post sort of internally for the new editor versus the way that it did for the old editor is quite different. It does recognize, though, that it's an old style post, and it gives you an ability to edit them. If you want to go belt and braces, there's a plugin which is called the Classic Editor plugin, and you add it in, and then it gives you an option, and so you can toggle between the new editor and the old editor. That's being phased out as the new editor is sort of like used by more people. But in the short term, I would use that. And then the other thing that you probably want to do is to try one of the basically like a staging server. There are services out there that will let you try your website. It effectively uploads it for you. You try it out. You can upgrade it, and then see what happens. And that's probably the safest way of doing it. But in the short term, add the plugin, the Classic Editor plugin, and use that.
I think it's fair to say we don't recommend, if you are running an old version of WordPress that hasn't been updated for a while, it's not a good idea to go into the back of your site and say, update me, because you almost certainly will run into problems, particularly if you previously were running in the old editor. So at the very least, you'd want to take a backup. There's a video on our website about one of the backup plugins that we recommend, but it can be complicated if you've got, again, a bespoke site that's been built in a particular, you know, highly tailored theme quite a while ago, to bring it up to using Gutenberg. That's the kind of thing we can help with. So we've done that for several clients to help them get an old site into the latest version of WordPress safely. So if that's of concern, drop us a note and we might be able to help you or point you at some more resources.
So I think that links, Steve, to that other question. Inherited a website that needs a change, wants to try out different themes, but wants the existing website to remain live until they've got the new version looking right. So are you suggesting a kind of backup staging site in that example as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's a service, the Updraft facility, which is the plugin that we tend to recommend for backups. Updraft Plus, those people, they also have a service where you can run what's called a staging version of your site, and it's a place where you can try out your site, make changes to it, and it doesn't affect the live site. So while it's not part of WordPress, core WordPress, there are these plugins which allow you to run copies of the site. That copy of the site you pay for, you buy some credits, and then you sort of do it. So it's not free, but it does give you the functionality that Joshua's after. Yep.
Thank you. A couple of questions about the contact form that you were showing. How does that contact form link to your email? And at what stage do you configure the email address that you want the contact form to be sent to? So I think that's about you as the vendor.
So just in the settings for the plugin, if we have a look in the plugin backend, in the settings, all this stuff along the top here, you sort of work through, and I think from memory in email, it's going to say, and that's the email that it's going to send to people. I can't work through all of these, but there's somewhere in this is the what happens after the form is submitted. And you would then say, yeah, I want it to go to this email address. You can configure, as you saw briefly there, in that back end if you want it to integrate with something like MailChimp or Constant Contact. But yeah, when you set up the form, there'll be settings. I think actually it's the settings that are specific to the form rather than to the broader plugin, where you say, right, make sure that every time I want to be notified every time a form is submitted, and I want the notification to come to this particular email address.
Thank you. I have a customer that wants a shop-only site created for wine at their vineyard. It's a nice customer. Will WooCommerce come in handy for this?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, you could have a site that just literally has a home page and then a WooCommerce store that's the rest of the functionality. There are other ways of doing that. I mean, we've been looking for another client at Shopify recently, which is another option. Outside of WordPress, you could just create a Shopify account, and that would generate basically a shop for you. But again, you're putting your eggs in the basket of commercialization. When you do that, you're paying a subscription for something, which in WordPress you can do for free. But yeah, you could simply build a site that just has a home page, and then everything else that's on it is the store for sure. WooCommerce would be fine for that.
Can you add recent posts onto your home page?
Yes, you can. So there are blocks for doing that. I'm not sure if one of them is free, if one of them is default, or we would have to install another plugin with some more blocks. But yes, in that plugin that I recommended, which I've momentarily forgotten the name of, there are more blocks for exciting ways of showing posts. But yes, you can, in the kind of basic blocks that come with, you can just have a post list on your home page. So that's a common thing that people would want to be able to do, is have a home page which is static, but within that embed your latest posts. So that block there will do that, and probably not look super amazing. It's not showing for some reason. I'm not sure why it's not showing. But the plugin that I recommended a moment ago, which is this one, Ultimate Add-ons, has a selection of different blocks that are for beautifully styled ways of showing your latest posts in a block on your homepage. So, controlling things like whether you want the featured image to be pulled through, whether you want the title, whether you want the author, do you want the featured image above or below, all that kind of stuff, a lot more sophisticated styling. So yeah, quite often we do that ourselves, use one of these Ultimate Add-ons blocks for that.
There was one that just came in the chat a moment ago that was about, we were talking about WooCommerce. How does WooCommerce handle credit card payments, or well, payments in general, I guess? Steve.
Within WooCommerce, it comes with PayPal, a simple PayPal integration, but there's lots of plugins for different payment gateways. So there's sort of an extended one for PayPal, where they give you a more streamlined checkout process. They have ones for Stripe, for WorldPay, or whatever they're called now. And so there are different plugins, and effectively what happens is you bob into your WooCommerce settings, go onto the tab for taking payments, and all of the details are in there, and then you bob in, put in your account details, whatever, and then it just happens automatically behind the scenes. The credit card payments are taken, and they usually integrate ways of testing it as well before you go live. So it's usually quite an easy way of integrating.
There's a follow-up question to that around WooCommerce, how handling stock and stock levels.
Yeah, so on a product, so you have a list of products within WooCommerce, and there's a setting which says, can I trade, or can I track my stock? And if you pop that in, then you can add a stock level to each product, and it will sort of take it down as purchases are made. You can set warning levels, and there are again some plugins which let you do things like handle large sets of products, almost like a spreadsheet, so that you can quickly sort of set them up and then sort of configure them that way. So all of that is generally sort of within there.
Thank you. I think I've got one left. I've inherited an older version of WordPress. How do I do an upgrade to a more recent one?
This goes back to what we were saying before. Tread carefully. You need to back up. Have a look at the updraft service. We can send the links out for this, or if we've got, I don't know if we've got them to hand, and we can stick them in the chat. But the updraft service that enables you to essentially have a testing version of your site, try it on that, make sure that it's fine before you put it live. Make sure that you've got a backup running, and if you're worried about it, that's, as I said earlier, that's the kind of thing that we can help with. It's worth kind of, if it's an old site that's been knocking around for a while and it's kind of mission critical for your business, it's worth spending a little bit of money getting it kind of health checked. Make sure all the plugins are up to date, make sure the WordPress is up to date, make sure, you know, security wise it's tippity top. And then once you have it at kind of modern standards, it's relatively easy to keep it that way. You can set things to automatically update and it'll tick away in the background. But the process of getting it from, it depends a little bit how old it is, but if it's more than, you know, 3 or 4 years old, it can be a bit of a performance to get it up to modern standards. But once it's done, you will reap the benefits.
That is great. I think that is all of the questions that come in. You've got lots of lovely thank yous. Another excellent webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to everybody who attended. As I said, I'll get an email out to you as soon as I can once the recording is processed, and that will have the slides and obviously a link to watch it back. Thank you, Steve, for heroically answering a lot of questions in the background today. Thank you very much. And thank you, Steve, Lorna, for an excellent presentation again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.